Good afternoon and welcome to Leadership Talk. My name is Megan McKinnon. I am a Rural Leadership Specialist with Manitoba Agriculture. During the webinar today, we will be discussing meeting agendas and how they can assist in making meetings more efficient and effective. Manitoba Agriculture industry leadership staff provide free webinars on building the organizational capacity within the agriculture sector, which results in high-performing organizations. Please note, this content is designed for informational purposes only. This information is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Organizations should consult their professional advisors related to specific situations. Today, we will be taking a look at the importance of the meeting agenda as a meeting management tool and the actions required by organizations prior to meetings that can help make agendas effective. As well, we will be exploring both the traditional and consent agenda formats and how each can play a role in creating efficient meetings. The purpose of a meeting is to make decisions around issues that impact the organization's mission. The meeting agenda helps to fulfill this purpose and serves as a brief outline of what you intend to discuss at a meeting and in what order. The agenda sets out the items for discussion, tasks to cover, and time allotted for the meeting. Agendas play a key role in effective meeting management by keeping the members and chair on track and on time during the meeting, and is one part of the total process used to conduct a meeting. They shape both the focus and process of meetings and can assist the chairperson in ensuring that business is conducted fairly, quickly, and can provide direction, order, and information to those attending. Agendas can set the tone for the meeting and influence board performance and ability to advance the organization's mission by their design. Typically, the chairperson, with the assistance of the secretary, prepare a new agenda for each meeting and circulate it to all members before the meeting. As mentioned earlier, the primary purpose of meetings is to make decisions around issues that impact the organization's mission. When this does not happen, individuals can become disengaged and feel that their time is being wasted. This can be a major factor in member resignations. Let's take a moment to look at the anatomy of a meeting to find out where and how time might be wasted during a meeting. A typical meeting of an organization is comprised of three different parts. First, items for information. This could include announcements, progress reports from committees, or copies of correspondence. The purpose of these agenda items is to simply inform the board of an action that has been taken that is affecting members. Second, items for discussion, referral, or tabling. These are agenda items that require further input by members prior to a recommendation for decision or action. These items may lack sufficient information, or there may be issues regarding these items that need to be referred to a committee or the executive. These may be poorly timed discussion items, or those that the board does not wish to take immediate action on. Finally, items for decision or action. These are agenda items that require action immediately. They are often discussions that result in specific recommendations. These are the agenda items that make members of the organization feel that they are having an impact. As you can see, only a portion of the typical agenda is focused on decisions. Organizations often find themselves tied up in spending too much time covering information, which does not leave sufficient time for discussing important issues and getting the real work done. To improve their effectiveness, organizations should aim to improve their efficiency. One way to do this is to develop clear, well-planned, and well-defined agendas tailored to the organization that specify the issues that the group should focus on to move the mission of the organization forward. To ensure that meeting agendas are effective, the entire meeting group should be consulted for input on agenda items. This can be done by requesting proposals for agenda items in advance of the meeting. The meeting chair and sometimes secretary or other executive members should work together to develop the agenda based on these and other standing items. The meeting participants should also have input on the format of the meeting. Meeting agenda. Selecting a format that works may take some trial and error, but once the preferred format is chosen, it should be followed at each meeting. If the format is deviated from, the group should be made aware of the changes and reasons for doing so. Once the items and format have been selected, individuals should be adequately informed of the issues that will come before them at the meeting. This includes information needed to inform decision-making that helps members prepare and therefore fully participate in the meeting. This could include copies of the agenda, past meeting minutes, materials to be used for discussion at the meeting, or committee reports. Let's look at the traditional agenda format. The traditional agenda is the most commonly used agenda format by organizations. Agenda items typically include the call to order, adoption of agenda, reading and adoption of minutes of the previous regular meeting, treasurer's report, business arising from the minutes, reading of correspondence and discussion, new business, and the adjournment. There are many templates for traditional agendas out there that can be easily accessed online. One such template can be found on Manitoba Agriculture's Industry Leadership webpage, the website for which will be provided at the end of this presentation. The traditional agendas can be used creatively to allow boards to include information and updates that keep the board informed, such as important upcoming dates. Including reminders or messages from the chairperson by inserting them into blank spaces on the paper or electronic copy of the agenda is one way to share information prior to the meeting and help participants get in the right frame of mind. Other small formatting tricks, such as printing in color, adding pictures, comics, or inspirational quotes, can set the tone for the meeting and are a subtle way to help board members focus on key issues and the mission of the organization. Another way to make traditional agendas more effective is by replacing titles or topics listed under new business with action items that include specific, measurable objectives. Here is a simple guide to writing these types of action agenda items. Start each sentence with to and follow by a verb. For example, to set the date, time, and location for our next fundraising event. Another example, to select an evaluation method for our educational programming. These types of statements help participants be prepared to contribute to the discussion. Although it is the most widely used agenda format, and one that most organizations are familiar or comfortable with, the traditional agenda does have its limitations. One of the most notable being the amount of items focused on information sharing. This can lead to less time available during the meeting for discussion and decision-making on issues directly related to the mission of the organization. A solution could be to consider the consent agenda as an alternative format. The consent agenda is a meeting management tool used for energizing your board and improving governance. It includes a single agenda item that combines all of the items that the board would normally approve at the meeting. The consent agenda groups the routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, and non-controversial items typically found in an agenda and requires the group to vote on them as a package or a bundle without discussion. The consent agenda is designed to counteract the limitations of the traditional agenda and offer more time during the meeting for items that require deliberation and decision-making. In other words, the things that matter most. It is popular with nonprofit groups because they help streamline meetings and allow the focus to be on important issues. Rather than emphasize reports and performance from the past, consent agendas energize meetings and create space for deep and forward thinking. Here is an example of an agenda that follows the consent agenda format. Item 1, the welcome. Item 2, the consent agenda portion, which could include minutes of the prior meeting, contract to retain the HR Council, financial report, project status report, and a CEO report. From there, item 3 could include an important discussion item, etc., etc. How does the consent agenda work? Unlike the traditional agenda, much of the work is done before the meeting by the participants. Prior to the meeting, board members receive all supporting documentation of items to be included in the consent portion of the agenda. The expectation is that participants have reviewed the information and asked any questions or sought clarifications required on these items prior to the meeting. This puts a greater responsibility on the meeting participants to prepare and engage in the discussion item prior to the meeting. At the meeting, there is no further discussion on these items. A vote on a single motion applies to all of the items on the consent portion of the agenda. What might have taken an hour now takes 5 minutes. If there are items on the consent portion of the agenda that an individual still wishes to discuss at the meeting, a request can be made by any member to pull the item of the consent from the consent agenda and add it to the full agenda. The chair then removes the item without question and includes it elsewhere in the full agenda where they deem appropriate. It is not always necessary to remove an item from the consent agenda if people have simple questions. Discussion is permitted after the motion for approval is made, but before the vote. However, extensive conversation defeats the purpose of using the consent agenda. What can and cannot be included in the consent agenda? Recall that agenda items are those that are routine and mostly informational. Here is a listing of appropriate items to include. Minutes from the previous meeting, routine correspondence requiring no action, committee and staff reports, updates or background reports provided for informational purposes only, appointments requiring board confirmation, approval of contracts that fall within the organization's policy guidelines, final approval of proposals that have been previously thoroughly discussed where the board is comfortable with the implications, or dates of future meetings. These items should be listed in the consent agenda in priority order. Items that should not be included in the consent agenda are things such as the auditor's report or major executive committee decisions, such as an item that involves significant financial support. If you are still unsure about what items your organization might include in the consent agenda, consider this checklist that can be used to help determine appropriate consent agenda items for your organization. First ask, is this item self-explanatory and uncontroversial? Is this item for information only? Are we simply confirming a previously discussed issue? Or does it contain an issue that warrants discussion? Is it needed for another meeting agenda issue? Or do we even need to continue the discussion? Note that organizations should fully understand the purpose, format, and process of the consent agenda before adopting and implementing. It should not be used to hide important issues or stifle difficult discussions. For an organization to implement the consent agenda, they must begin by approving a motion to adopt the consent agenda as the accepted agenda format for its meetings. They should then craft a policy about what may and may not be included in the consent portion of the agenda. Prior to the meeting, as previously mentioned, the agenda should be set by the chairperson and possibly other members of the executive. All documentation supporting items in the consent agenda are circulated and should be reviewed by meeting participants. At the meeting, the first item of business, the chairperson will ask if anyone wishes to remove an item from the consent portion of the agenda. If there is an item to be removed, the chairperson will determine where on the full agenda these items will be discussed. Immediately after, the chairperson asks for a motion to accept the consent agenda, and the motion is voted on by the membership. Minutes will state that the consent agenda was approved unanimously and which items were removed. All supporting documents should be saved with the agenda to demonstrate the information on which the group based its decision. The rest of the agenda is up to the organization. Traditional format is acceptable, but it may be more beneficial to tackle one or two items that relate directly to the mission, vision, and organizational values that require special attention. While not difficult to use, a consent agenda requires discipline in working through these steps. If order for this agenda is to be effective, the board materials must be provided in plenty of time for board members to read them all, and they must read them all. In reviewing the agenda reading package, board members should consider three things. 1. Do I have all of the information that I need? 2. Does anything need to be corrected? And 3. Does anything need to be discussed by the board? Because this agenda format imposes different expectations on all parties, it must be understood and accepted by all. But we know that change is not always easy. Adopting a new style of agenda will require open-mindedness and flexibility from those affected by the change. The decision should be made thoughtfully, with a solid understanding of the ramifications of the change. The following steps can help the board adopt or the group adopt change. 1. Discuss the benefits of using this format. 2. Create a reference or cheat sheet on how it works. 3. Outline the criteria for what can and cannot be included on the consent portion of the agenda. 4. Ease into the process. Start with the obvious, clear items. 5. Ask the board how it's working. And finally, fine-tune meetings and materials as necessary to suit your organization. Whatever agenda format your organization chooses to use, always be aware that members of your organization feel appreciated when their time and talents are being respected. Today, we covered a number of ways that agendas contribute to an effective and efficient meeting. This included preparing agendas with limited, well-defined items that contribute to the overall mission of the organization, as well as writing agenda items as action statements to help participants know who needs to be involved in the discussion and how they should prepare. We discussed using the consent agenda as an alternate format to assist with time management and engagement. My hope is that the information provided in this webinar offered useful concepts and ideas that can be used within your organization. If you would like to access the agenda template and related resources on this topic, please visit the Manitoba Agriculture Industry Leadership website, the address for which will be provided on the following slide. I invite you to stay connected with us. Any questions that you may have about this or any of the webinars in our Leadership Talk series can be sent to leadership@gov.mb.ca. Please visit our website at the link provided and click on Industry Leadership. You can follow us on Twitter or watch recorded webinars on our YouTube channel. As a result of your participation today, you will receive a follow-up email which will include an evaluation. When it arrives, please take a moment to click on the link and share your thoughts. The email will also include various resources referenced in this webinar. You can also ask questions or request a copy of the presentation by emailing us at leadership@gov.mb.ca. I'd like to invite you to view the other webinars in our Spring 2017 series. Minutes. Minutes are a legal record of the decisions of an organization. Learn more about keeping an accurate record of your meeting. Alternative voting. Examine the variety of ways your organization can vote with the use of technology. Board orientation process. Discuss a process that will develop new directors to prepare and serve on the board. Quiet leadership. Explore the characteristics of introverts and extroverts. Involve both on your board to enhance communication and build a stronger organization. Thank you for viewing today's webinar.